So today I want to show you another cooler by ID Cooling. Now in the last video we looked at the A410DK from ID Cooling, and that turned out to be a pretty decent little upgrade to the stock CPU coolers. Today I've got the FX360 PRO water cooler, which is an all-in-one cooler. Now ID Cooling did send this over to me free of charge, and I know there's tons of options for AIOs out there, different sizes, things like that. But this is, I think, what is going to turn out to be a pretty good budget option, coming in at about $59.99 when I checked. The FX360 Pro that I've got with me today is just an all-black water cooler. There's no RGB lighting on this, which looks cool sometimes as well. Now, if you're new to AIO water coolers, essentially it's just a complete sealed unit. There's no maintenance to it. It's pre-filled with water, but basically you get a radiator, the water hoses, and the pump housing is all pre-attached to that. And the motor and all the electronics and everything is in the pump head here. Now, I don't want to bore you with a bunch of specifications. You can look those up if you need to, but a couple that you might want to know about. The overall length of this is 397 millimeters. Obviously, the width is 120. The thickness of the radiator itself is 27 millimeters. The fans measure 25 millimeters thick, so when you pair that with the radiator, you're going to get a measurement of about 52 to 53 millimeters. Kind of depends on how tight you get those fans. The water hose length is 465 millimeters from the radiator out to the pump assembly. As I mentioned earlier, the radiator's got 12 water channels in it. And if you're interested, I measured a fins per inch at approximately 21. That's not an official specifications. I just kind of did a count based on that. Now it's rated for 350 watts of heat dissipation. So looking inside the box, you get the AIO itself, of course, which has the pump and all the water tubing pre-assembled, pre-filled with water. Now the three fans do kind of daisy chain connect together. They don't have really long cables on it. They're meant to kind of hug the side of the radiator assembly here, but it does come with an extension cable that connects onto the end of that. Now it does also come with a tube of thermal paste. The thermal paste is not pre-applied from ID Cooling, so you will need to use this. This is the Frost X45, and there's enough in here to do a couple of remounts should you need to do that. Inside the box is all of the hardware for all of the popular AMD and Intel sockets, including the latest and greatest, LGA 17, LGA 1200. On the AMD side, there's hardware there for AM4 and AM5. It also does come with some combs here for the water tubes themselves. Installation is fairly straightforward. It's not hard to do, and it's fairly typical of what you would find on other AIOs like this. Now, the instruction booklet has all the information you need to get started. There's not a whole lot of detailed text information here step by step, but each socket has its own page here devoted, and it shows you kind of in bright highlights which components you need, and then gives you an order in which you need to do it. So everything to get started, there's enough information in there so that you shouldn't have any trouble. Now for the AMD installation on both AM4 and AM5, you're going to need to remove the existing brackets, but you are going to keep the back plate. So you're going to need to remove the 4 screws that hold those existing bracket pieces on. But once you get the existing brackets off, then in the kit are 4 little rubber grommets, and you need to slide those over the existing posts on the existing back plate. That will protect it from when you put the standoffs on, but it also does hold that back plate in and makes installation a little bit easier. Now, before or after you get the rubber grommets installed, you do want to prep the pump head for installation. Now, it comes with 2 mounting rings. One is for AMD, the other is for Intel. It's fairly clear from the documentation which one belongs to which. Now, it's not very hard to install this. There's a registration mark on the pump housing itself, and then a registration mark on the ring as well. You just need to line those 2 rings up. But once you get the registration marks lined up, you're going to press this plate fully on, and then go ahead and give it a twist in a clockwise direction as you're facing the copper plate. And that will lock it into position. Then you are ready to proceed. But before or after you get your back plate prepped, you do want to install the AMD standoffs. And basically these are threaded on both ends, but only one side is going to thread into the AMD backplate. The documentation gives you a pretty good illustration of how that should look, and it's not hard to get. You'll know if you have it wrong because it's not going to thread in properly. Now the next step is to go ahead and apply your thermal paste. Basically, I like to give it a pea-sized amount of thermal paste, and then I use a spatula to kind of spread it all over. Now, because I did a number of tests with both the Corsair and the ID Cooling AIO, I didn't have quite enough of the ID Cooling thermal paste to complete all my tests. So I again used some thermal paste that was provided to me from Be Quiet. This is the Thermal Hero, and I used the quantum version of it today. I will leave links in the description to all these products down below if you want to check them out. Before you mount the cooler, you want to attach the 3 fans, and it includes all of the screws. There's 4 long screws per fan, so 12 total. Now you'll just need to make a decision as to whether you want to mount them in the front or the back. You know, if you're going to mount the AIO on top, they're going to be on the side with the water hoses. If you're going to mount in the front, you may want to mount the fans on the front. That's a whole different subject as to which is most effective. You could do push-pull on this if your case will allow. There's lots of techniques and things you could do with it. Once you've decided on that, you can go ahead and screw them down, and then you can attach all of the cables here, and they just daisy chain together, and then you can just attach the extension to the last lead here, and this was what you will connect up to your motherboard header or your favorite fan controller. But once you've got your thermal paste, your locking ring, and the standoffs and the rubber grommets installed on the back plate, you can install the pump assembly. Basically, you're just going to position it over the 4 standoffs, kind of set it down there. And then included in the box are the 4 nuts that you're going to use to secure that. So I like to just start them kind of finger tight just to hold it down on there, keep some pressure on that pump assembly. I really don't go much more than hand tight. I might just snug it with a screwdriver, but you don't need to go so tight on this. Installing the cooler on an Intel socket is going to largely be the same experience, but one key difference is you're going to use the included backplate from ID Cooling. Once that's installed, you're going to choose which spacer you're going to use. It's going to differ based on LGA 1200 or LGA 1700. Once the spacers are there, go ahead and install the Intel circular bracket to the pump assembly. It's the same exact thing. You match up the registration marks, twist it and lock it into place, and then go ahead and apply your thermal paste, really just in the same manner, and then go ahead and lock this down over the, and then screw it down using the nuts, same as AMD. And of course you'll connect up the fans and the pump assembly to power just as you would on AMD. Now the kit does include 3 combs for the water tubes themselves. This is just kind of to piece them together, just kind of an aesthetic. They're not required for operation. These can just help kind of dress it up, make it look good, and kind of keep them in the position that you want. But the kit does include all of the screws to attach this to your case, and you are ready to go at that point. Then you can go ahead and connect up your fans and your pump assembly. Now the water pump itself is powered by a simple 3-pin DC power connector. Now you want to connect this up to a water pump header if you have it. Most motherboards will have that available to you. But go ahead and connect the 3 fans up to a CPU fan header on your motherboard. Most motherboards will have 2 headers right there, one for the water pump, one for the CPU fans. Now, the recommendation is to run the pump at 100%. So I would recommend get in the BIOS, find the fan curves for the header that you've got the pump attached to, and run it at 100%. Then obviously, if you can, put an alert on that. So if there's ever a pump failure, things of that nature, you get some sort of alert or a reaction to that. But I just recommend getting there, test with it, find a good balance between noise and performance. Now I would recommend on your first power up, just kind of listen for the fan. You should be able to hear it. And just make sure that your fans are running and there's no obstructions or anything like that. And then once you get into Windows, you can kind of check and see what your CPU temps are doing. I like to use hardware info if I'm not using IQ to monitor CPU temperatures, or Ryzen Master. But just use whatever popular tool you want to use to monitor the CPU temps and just make sure it's not running away on you. But if you're having CPU temperature problems, it could be a number of different things. It could be you don't have enough thermal paste on there, or it's been applied incorrectly. Double check your standoffs and your brackets, make sure all that's good and you got good solid contact on here. Could be that the pump is too loose and not tight enough. You may want to try a little bit more pressure on it and see if that gets everything under control. Make sure your fans are running. Another way to check if the pump is actually running is, even though it's a 3-pin DC connector, it is getting an RPM feedback to your motherboard or controller. So make sure you go monitor that and make sure you're running at the speed that you set. If you're not getting really good CPU temps, I would recommend start at 100% on that and then work from there. But assuming all of your temperatures and everything is running okay, and it is a pretty forgiving installation, just take your time doing it and you'll be all right. There's nothing really crazy about this, and it's relatively simple, and I didn't encounter any issues with the installation or getting it running the whole time I've been playing with it. All of the tests I ran against the 3800X from AMD. Now the first set of tests I all ran against just the stock BIOS settings. The only thing I went in there and set was a XMP profile for the RAM. Now for AMD, that means it's gonna hunt around and try to find the best frequency. So for all of the tests, the ambient air is between 21 and 22 degrees Celsius. Now for all of the tests, I did two different passes. The first pass was everything just noise normalized to 35 decibels, and that was at about 20 inches. And that was with the pump always running at 100% and then just adjusting the fans to meet that 35 decibel level. And then I just ran Cinebench for 30 minutes, collected all that information, and then just averaged that out. For the stock BIOS settings and normalized at 35 decibels, the Corsair H150 achieved an average frequency of 4117, and while running on the ID cooling cooler, it achieved an average frequency of 4127. So there's not a whole lot of difference between those two. The Corsair H150 achieved an average T-die temp of 73.06 Celsius, and while running on the ID cooling cooler, it achieved 71.54 C. Now, idle temps when normalized to 35 decibels, I got 28.52 Celsius when running on the ID cooling cooler and 32.24 Celsius when running on the Corsair cooler. So overall, on stock BIOS settings, it performed fairly well and comparable to the Corsair in this case, and in some cases a little bit better. Now for the second set of tests, I just ran everything at 100% full out. The pump is at 100%, the fans are at 100%, so this theoretically should be the best it could achieve. And again, I've got the stock BIOS settings on here, so it's going to hunt around for the frequency. And the Corsair H150i achieved an average frequency of 4144. And while running on the ID Cooling FX360 PRO, it achieved an average frequency of 4139. While the fans are at 100%, the H150i achieved an average T-die temp of 69.46. And the ID Cooling FX360 PRO achieved a T-die average of 69.80 Celsius. So for the next set of tests, I went into the BIOS and I overclocked the CPU to 4.3 gigahertz and controlled all of the voltage settings that I can get a hold of. And in these tests, I left the pump speed at 100% and I went ahead and noise normalized everything else to 35 decibels. So in these tests, the frequency range won't matter. It was solid at 4.3 gigahertz. And I've ran this CPU at these voltage settings and haven't had any problems in the past. In this round of testing, the Corsair H150 achieved an average T-die temp of 68.50 C, and the ID Cooling FX360 PRO achieved an average T-die temp of 62.11 C. Now the idle temps with the overclocked BIOS and the noise normalized to 35 dBA, I got 31.27 C for the Corsair AIO, and 29.81 C for the ID cooling. So again, a couple of degrees better there. Now with the overclocked BIOS settings, I went ahead and ran all the fans at 100%, pumps at 100, and just everything full out, and just repeated the 30-minute Cinebench tests. On this test, the Corsair H150 achieved an average T-die temp of 65.35 C, while the ID Cooling FX360 PRO achieved an average T-die temp of 60.63. So kind of remained about the same distance apart between these two with the overclocked BIOS. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I didn't have enough of the thermal paste from ID Cooling to complete all of these tests. So I used this paste from Thermal Hero. This is the Quantum thermal paste. Again, I'll link to this in the description below. But I did want to do just a quick comparison of the Thermal Hero paste and the ID Cooling Frost X45 paste to see how it performed. For this particular test, I left the pumps at 100% and just noise normalized everything else to 35 dB. So using the ID Cooling X45 paste on the ID Cooling FX360 PRO, I averaged 62.82 C, and while using the Thermal Hero Quantum paste, I got 62.11 C, so just probably within the margin of error. Now, while using the Corsair H150i, because I tested both pastes on that, so the ID Cooling paste averaged 65.55 C over the Thermal Hero paste, which did a little bit poorer here, of 68.50 C. Now, a couple things I want to point out in these tests. It's not exactly a fair comparison between the two coolers. The Corsair H150i, as I mentioned earlier, is maybe a year or two old, and it's been used quite a bit. So it could have a little bit of coolant loss in there, maybe some anomalies in the pumps. There just is all sorts of differences in this test data. And in addition to that, the H150i from Corsair has the Commander Core controller in it. So you introduce that controller and the IQ software on top of that. Now, I did let the IQ software run while I was testing this cooler, just in case it was drawing a little bit of extra wattage on the CPU. But you do have to run that controller with some additional hardware and things like that. That's really going to be a pro for this particular cooler at $60. You don't have any of those controllers. There's no additional fuss messing with it. So it's kind of really a simplistic installation. Just, you know, mount the cooler on the CPU, plug in your fan and your pump, and you can monitor the pump speed, you know, within your motherboard software, and so on and so forth, and it works pretty good. So you don't have all of this extra controller stuff that you need. There are some advantages to using some of the fancier AIOs from Corsair. You do get the controller, which opens up, you know, the ability to control RGB lighting. You get some more sensor ability. You can monitor the coolant temperature and things like that. And you can set some fan curves right within that software. So if you're looking for a decent entry-level AIO to get you started that, at least in my testing, performed decently enough, check out the ID Cooling FX360 Pro. I would recommend check out ID Cooling. They got a lot of other products. They've got other AIOs out there that have RGB lighting and all the fancy stuff on them, and a whole bunch of different things to choose from, different fans, you know, a bunch of air coolers, things like that. Give them a check out. Put affiliate links to all the products I've talked about in this video if you want to check those out. But that is going to do it for the FX360 Pro cooler from ID Cooling. Check it out using the links below. But that is going to do it for today. See you in the next one.